This episode of Adjuster TV is sponsored by the Elite Adjuster Method and by apadjusting.com. What do we do if there are no storms this year? And while there's been stuff in Colorado, and earlier this spring we had New York State and the Northeast got some heavy winter storm stuff. It's been pretty slow, and by all accounts, it's been about half of the year that we normally have when it comes to the typical kinds of storms that we usually get where we work. Which means that there's not a whole lot of opportunities for new people to get the chance to prove themselves on their first storm so that they can start to build their career in this. Because the truth is, you guys, no matter how much other training that you have, your first storm is the thing that gets you on the radar of everybody, where you have the chance to prove yourself as an adjuster, that it clicks with you, that you're able to put all the parts together, put the arms on it and the head and stand it up and pat it on the butt and make it walk, and get this career going. If you don't have that opportunity, then you're not going to be on anybody's radar. You're not on the first call list if you haven't worked a storm before. You're not on any call list, really. I mean, you're on the if we need extra people newbies list, and we haven't had a whole lot of opportunities. We've had, Colorado was a pretty big opportunity, but since then and before then we haven't really had a whole lot, which is kind of unusual. Doesn't mean that you can't get started on a small storm. Happens all the time, but most of the time new people get their start on big events. So we need big events. And we're halfway through the year, and hail season kind of tapering off. Still plenty of time to have big hailstorms. I mean, I've worked hailstorms in November in the Midwest. It's not uncommon, but it isn't normal. So it's kind of rare to be sitting there, a week before Thanksgiving and get a phone call saying, "Hey, you want to go to Ohio for a hailstorm?" Heck yeah, I do, but it's not a call that you get very often. Hurricane season. Hurricane season, it started back at the end of May, but it doesn't really peak until the middle of September, end of September, and it's kind of the middle of August through the September is like it peaks in September, and then it kind of tapers off through the middle of October. So you still have that to look forward to. And I would tell you guys not to worry. Number one, don't worry. Because if you keep a long-term mindset, if you're patient, and if nothing else happens this year, you can still pick this up again next spring. And it's kind of awkward and kind of strange to say that, because I'm trying to teach you guys how to do this job, and to say, well, probably, there's a good chance that nothing might happen until, almost a year from now, is probably not news that you want to hear. But we don't have any control over the weather, and if we could predict catastrophes, then we probably wouldn't need insurance. The opportunities for deployment are dwindling, or there's the professions that are dwindling. They're starting to get less and less as we push in through the end of July and into August. Again, hurricane season, we had 2 years in a row. So we had Hurricane Matthew, I think it was, in 2016, and then we had two big ones last year. That's 2 years in a row of hurricanes. It's not often that we have 3 years in a row of hurricanes. Doesn't mean it can't happen. Absolutely anything can happen. And I've said it a dozen times before, but you can't listen to the hurricane predictions, whether they're high or low, because it only takes one hurricane to get through and hit Louisiana, hit Miami, hit a big area where there's a lot of houses, to put everybody to work. And it does, whether the forecast is for 5 named storms or 15 named storms, we only need one. So in other words, we just have to wait and see what happens. We can't sit there and try and predict it, because there's just no way to predict it. I mean, you could have 25 huge Category 5 storms all at the same time, and they could all wind around out in the over the ocean and then blow out to sea and never hit land. And there's all your named storms, but none of them caused any damage. So long story short, we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens with hurricane season. Number two, I would say let's plan to hang on to our day job, even if it's something that we don't care for. Don't quit your job right now if you haven't in the expectation that there's going to be a hurricane that you're going to go work. I would say hang on to your job until you get deployed, because if nothing else happens this year, you're going to need to work through the winter and into the beginning of next spring when storm season starts up again. And if you don't have a job now, if you quit your job, then you're going to have to find another job, and you might as well hang on to what you got. So it's a little bit of tough love, but you kind of have to play the long game with this. These years are slow even for experienced people, and experienced people are going to be the ones that get the deployment. So I would say after the end of August that even if you do get called to go and work a windstorm or a small hailstorm somewhere as your first storm as a new person, I would be seriously tempted to turn it down, because if you quit your day job and you go get on your very first storm, the storm that you're going to learn on, where there's a lot of opportunities to wash out or have something go wrong with it, and if your volume wasn't very good, if production wasn't very good, or you decide you don't like it, then you're going to end that storm with not very much money and no other job. So you've quit your job and you're going into the slow time. So no matter what happens during storm season, for experienced veteran adjusters, I would say after Thanksgiving and through March-ish, pretty much nobody's working. Everybody's on vacation, or they're home with their kids, or they're doing whatever, but they're not doing storms unless there's a little pop-up storm here and there. You're definitely in the slow season. New people are absolutely, except under the rarest circumstances, are they going to get deployed in the slow time when nobody else is working. So I wouldn't quit my day job for a small end of season storm as a new person going into the slow time, unless it's a big hurricane and it's all hands on deck and they need everybody, in which case I'd say absolutely jump in, because you could be working claims on a big hurricane for months, and you could make a great big gigantic pile of money, which would make everything else a moot question. I would seriously, personally, with the experience that I have, I would probably decline working a small storm as a first storm, unless you have a way to jump right back into your job, in which case absolutely go for it, because then it's going to be experience and networking. But if you're just kind of coming into this fresh, and you just got your license and you just got a little bit of training and you got Xactimate certification, and your normal day job is what you use to keep food on the table, I wouldn't do it. I would think very, very hard about it. Or if you absolutely wanted to or had to, or if you're going to not take my advice, make sure that you can either go back to your old job that you just quit, or have a backup plan, another job that you can jump into pretty easily, so that you can not starve in the winter, because we make our money during storm season. We're storm adjusters, and there's not that many storms over the winter, so everybody's usually pretty quiet, especially December, January. I mean, almost nobody's working because nothing's going on, and there's not always a big winter storm to work like there was this year. So number 3, if the storm season ends, say mid-October, Halloween passes and nothing's happened, I effectively call that the end of storm season. This is your opportunity to put some polish on your training and to network. So save back money. Start now, please. Start now. Save some money, and try to find the highest quality training that you can get your hands on, whether it's online or whether it's at a school. Educate yourself on construction materials. Adam Painter was telling me that he went to Hague and got a Hague damage, I'm not even sure what they call it, but the Hague Engineering damage evaluation certification, and he said it was the most well spent money he's ever spent. If you can get that damage evaluation training, that's huge. And then scoping, and I'm getting a lot of practice with Xactimate. Spend this between when storm season ends and when everything's over. If you're not getting deployed, it makes you more marketable when stuff starts up next spring. If you have like a Hague Engineering certification, that damage evaluation certification, and you've got an Xactimate level 2, and you attended another like school where you can show that you have like a week's worth of this kind of training, on site, hands on, or you have like this extensive online training program. This will only help you come next spring, and I would definitely save up the money for it. This is a job where you can make $100,000 or more in the summer, right? And you don't need a graduate degree. You don't need a bachelor's degree. You don't even need like an associate's degree. And I'll be honest with you guys, you barely need a high school diploma to be considered to do this job. If you can do the job, then you can do the job, and they will put you on claims, and you can make the money. So spending a couple $1,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on training and travel expenses to conferences and getting extra certifications, that's like, I mean, if you could get a bachelor's degree for $5,000 and you got, a bachelor's degree is going to get you like a job where you can make $45,000 a year or $55,000 a year, and it costs $100,000 to get a bachelor's degree. So if you're not willing to spend $5,000 to get a job where you can make $100,000 in a summer, then I think that maybe you should rethink your priorities a little bit, because that is just a drop in the pan. And after you've been a CAD adjuster for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 10 years or whatever, I showed in the previous video, you can retire in 15 years with this job, making this kind of money. So I wouldn't balk at the cost of training. Veteran Adjusting School, they have a program, I think it's $18,000. I would consider that, because that taking that training from that school cancels out any experience. If you go to Pilot or Payside or one of those companies and you say, I went through the 3-month or whatever it is Veteran Adjusting School program, they'll say you're hired, and they'll put you right on the roster, because that qualifies as experience, and it's super high quality, and it's a fraction of the cost of getting a bachelor's degree. So whether or not you go for that, or you want to spend less than that, spend the time, take the time, because this job you can make a lot of money. Attend certification or attend conferences, and they're mostly in January. There's the NACA, which is the National Association of Catastrophe Adjusters, has a big conference. A lot of the big vendors have conferences. Attend them, and then just hang in there and just use those as networking opportunities, because you're going to be able to meet managers, and everybody who's not working, which is everybody in January, is going to be at these conferences. You can shake hands, you can talk to them, you can ask them questions, you can ask them what exactly you need to do to get on their roster, and they'll tell you. And they, you might even get to go out with cocktails with them and some other managers or whatever, and you make friends with those people, and they'll remember you, and they will remember you when storms start up. So I want you guys to don't be afraid, be patient, and don't be nervous or scared or anxious about this, because this is just the nature of this business. It's high risk. You have to, as a new person, you have to get on a storm before you can become a person who's not a new person anymore. And the only way to do that is to network, get that training, and make sure that all your ducks are in a row when the storm does hit. And if the storm doesn't hit, you have to be prepared to roll with the punches and lay back, wait for the winter to pass, and get started back up in the spring. So anyway, thanks guys, and have a great storm.